Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We up? Hey, we got a big treat. It's my dear friend Navina Nirada Prabhu. We're going to sit together, explore some verses from Gita. We are on chapter 9, text 34. The last verse of the 9th chapter, the exact center of the Gita. I guess I'll start things off. This is the only verse in the whole Gita that's spoken twice. And it's significant. That's not by accident. It's also, we're in the dead center of the text. So there's 18 chapters. The last verse of the 9th chapter is the exact dead center of the book. And this verse is described like a gem hidden in the middle of the book. And it's the only verse spoken twice. And at the end of the Gita, Krishna says, I'm going to say it one more time. And he speaks this verse again. And he calls it his Paramam Vacha, the supreme instruction. He calls it Sarva Guhyatama, the greatest of all secrets. He tells Arjuna to listen to it, Shrinu Me, because it's Tehitam, it's for his benefit. And Krishna says he speaks it because Ishto Asime Dridham Iti. Because I love you so much, I'm speaking this verse again. So this is the first instance where it occurs. Let's go through the Sanskrit real quick, and then we'll start our discussion. Manmana, think of me. Bhava Mad Bhakta, be my devotee. Madhyaji, worship me. Mam Namaskuru, offer respect to me. Mam Evaisyasi, Yuktaivam. If you are yoked to me, if you are thus yoked to me, you will come to me. Atmanam matparayanaha. A soul who is thus yoked to me and who holds me as the highest object. Matparayana means you hold me as the highest object. Then Esya Simam, you will come to me. A yuktatma, a yoked soul, a yogad soul. Someone who's yogad to me by thinking of me, being my devotee, worshiping me, and offering respects to me. That's the yoga. If you do that and you're yoked to me through those 4 processes, then you will come to me if you hold me as the highest object. Did you guys follow that? All right. Speak something. We'll go back and forth.
Great seeing you all. So, Krishna is putting out very intimate information about himself here. And that is very precious, because to know anybody intimately is a privilege. It's something that's not just openly available. And Krishna is putting it out because Arjuna was intimate and he is his dear friend and confidant. You don't reveal your personal secrets to anybody on the street. But Arjuna had earned that because he was not just a friend, but he was a very dear friend. In Sanskrit, there are different types of friends. There's a social friend, a formal friend, a friend by work or by vicinity of where you live. But then there is what's called surit. Surit means your benefactor, the one who actually is your well-wisher. There's also bandhu and so many others. Sanskrit is very scientific in the way how it's applied. So, to become dear to Krishna is something very special. So here, he's giving us very intimate information about his own nature and how we can become dear to him. So we're fortunate to have this information here in the Bhagavad Gita, given by a person who actually is dear to Krishna, somebody who is applying themselves to the process. It's not a theoretical or an academic exercise, because you can't really build friendship or intimacy on an academic or an intellectual exercise. Just like the two of us are pretty close, not just because we're sitting close here together or we're a similar height, you know. I mean,
I'm watching you here.
He's a little shorter.
I'm a lot shorter.
But he's a little bigger.
I didn't realize how much shorter I was than you.
But because back in the day when we were both brahmacharis, we were both monks, we were traveling around roaming the woods and meeting occasionally, and because we're kind of brothers in arms, working for the same cause, for the same mission, even though we were on different geographical locations, but our paths would cross regularly, and we're on the same wavelength. We can jam together because we understand the same bass line. I mean, that's music talk, you know. If you understand the bass line, you can pretty much play any instrument. So that's what Krishna asking us to do here, is to get onto his bass line, to get on with his groove, and in this way, we can actually perfect our lives by coming close to the source of all existence. And that intimacy, that relationship is ultimately what we're all hankering for. Because everybody ultimately is looking for the supreme love, wants to experience that love, and wants to share it with others. Am I right or am I right? Please say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. You're very compliant, very so, and that's why we're here, because we want to know the inside story, how to actually enter into not just the text intellectually, but on a level of the heart, on a level of application. Back to you.
Yeah. I don't want to waste too much time because we were a little late starting, but Nirada, my friend, he's been a devotee since 1984. He's older than me, but he joined when he was like 13, 14 years old. How old was he? 15. He was 15 years old. He joined the temple. And he was a leader in the Hare Krishna movement before I even joined. So he joined 4 years before me, and he's 5 years older than me. And so we followed similar arcs, but he's just a few years ahead of me. He's also retired from family life about 13 years ago. And he's been living as a monk for the last 13 years. He travels all over the world. He's very, very well spoken. He's an expert book distributor. He's like a Vaisheshika Maharaj level book distributor. World famous. #1 in the world for decades. It's like incredibly skilled at distributing books. He's a powerhouse, really just like a dynamic leader. Somebody I've always looked up to and been inspired by since I joined. I knew about him, within 6 months of joining because he was so world famous as a young devotee who was so successful at doing outreach. And then we met for the first time maybe in 1995 or something like that, and we've been friends ever since. So he runs, he started the Bhakti Center West, this temple up in the Bay Area on San Francisco itself. For Radhanath Maharaj, he started that project as a satellite for Vaisheshika Maharaj's ISV temple. So he's real close to my upline. The people I love so much are also the people he loves so much. And yeah, so that's a little bit about Navina. Something I noticed in the verse, I really like the direction he was going in, that Krishna's making an invitation here. I don't want to get too technical with you guys, but because we'll move on from this verse and we'll start to discuss other verses, everybody look at your book, chapter 9, text 34, or share a book with somebody. Look at a book. I know I always tell you guys not to look at the book and just to listen, but here I want you guys to actually see it. If you look at the book, you see Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskaru, chapter 9, text 34. You see that? Okay, that's all the same. Mame Vaisyasi, you'll come to me. Up till that point, the verses are the same. The one at the end of the Gita and this one are exactly the same. So there's 2.5, almost 3 quatrains, quarters of the verse. Sanskrit's not quite written like that. It's like a line and a half of the 2 lines. But if you look at it as being 4 quatrains, there's 4 quadrants of the verse. Each are 11 syllables long, and there's 4 of them. Or is it 8 syllables long? Man, mana, bhava, mad, bhakta. Yeah, it's 8 syllables. 4 lines of 8 syllables. It's the anustup. It's called the shloka meter. So 2.5 of them are the same. But then the last part is yuktva, evam atmanam, a soul who is thus yoked to me, matparayana, holding me as the highest object, will come to me if he does these 4 things. Do you guys follow that? So at the end of the Gita, the words which are different are, Krishna says, Mama vaisasi satyam te, truly you will come to me. Pratijane, I promise you this. Priya asime, because I love you so much. So this verse says, you will come to me having been yoked to me and holding me as the highest object. The last verse says, you will come to me, I promise you, you will truly come to me because I love you so much. Do you guys spot the difference? What's the difference, Nick?
In chapter 9, it's about Krishna being this like philosophical goal, and then in chapter 18, it's like a pure loving relationship.
All right, okay, good. It's more intimate in the 18th chapter. Good. Who else thinks they got it? Darshan.
It's a promise.
Yell at me.
It's a promise in the second verse, where it's just kind of a general statement in the first.
It's a possibility in the first verse, and it's a promise in the second verse. Okay, there's an intensifying of it, and there's an increase in intimacy. Good. Who else thinks they got it? Ross.
Chapter 9 is about what you're doing. You're holding Krishna in your highest regard, and then in chapter 18, it's about Krishna loving you. It's what his side of it.
Chapter 9 is about what you do. Chapter 18 is about what Krishna does. What do you think about Ross's answer, Nick?
That's a really good answer.
Are you listening to that going, wow, it's better than my answer?
Definitely.
How about you, Darshan? Right? Both your answers are good. They're excellent. Am I good? Both your answers are good. They're excellent. Ross, I think you really hit the nail on the head. There's a mood in the 9th chapter where if you do this, then you'll get this. It's a conditional statement. If, then. It's very much about what you do. You're going to climb the stairway to heaven. If you are dedicated like this. In chapter 18, Krishna's practically begging you. I promise you, I love you so much. If you just think of me, if you just become my devotee. Like I'm just looking for a little bit, an open door. I'll do the rest. There's very much that mood. And so you can see Krishna evolving, the same basic core. There's something we have to do. We have to open our hearts up. A reciprocal relationship requires two. Just today, it was actually a wonderful exchange. Navina Nirada Prabhu said, hey, I'm coming to Laguna because Vaisheshika Maharaj is doing this big program. So I'm going to come for the program. I said, great. He said, can we sit together? I said, sure, we can sit together. He said, I want to talk to you about something. I go, yeah, what do you want to talk about? He goes, I'll just talk to you about when I see you. So I said, sure. So he texted me, I'm coming down. I'll be at the temple in an hour. Can you meet me there? So we met up and we sat together. This was just earlier today at the temple. And he said, hey, the last couple times we met, I felt like there was some distance between us. I felt the last few times we met, I felt like we weren't so close. Maybe I've offended you. I want to offer my respects to you. I feel like I did, that there was some blockage between us, and we've been friends for a long time, half our lives, longer than half our lives, and I don't want there to be any space between us. Life is short. I don't want to have any negative feelings, and so I want to apologize for anything I might have done to offend you. Did you follow this? This was his opening gambit. And I had no clue whatsoever what he was talking about. I had no clue. Like, I didn't remember our exchanges. I didn't remember there being any space between us. I didn't remember. He was the one who saved us. He owns that building in Mayapur where you stayed, where they stuck us in that bad building, and at midnight I had to shift you guys around. And the building you went to where you're like, wow, this is such a nicer place. That's his building. He's Swiss German. So he's Swiss German. I'm actually not as short as I thought I was. I was slouching. I'm still probably a little shorter, but I was really feeling like I was a little person over here. He took care of us when we went there. And it was like the middle of the festival, and he just made things work for us and gave us that nice place to stay. You were there too, right? So I thought everything was great between us. Because I could not remember us having a bad exchange, that proved to me, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, what? That I was the offending party. Because when somebody wrongs me, it's I always I might forgive it, but I at least make a notation of it. It's always there. I have a good memory, and I'm not able to quite, forgiveness and forgetfulness are two different things. So, I knew I'd been the one to make a mistake. So anyway, I apologized to him, and he forgave me, and we embraced, and we offered respects to one another, and expressed mutual appreciation for one another, and had a really nice, confidential, intimate conversation about life and what's been going on in each one of our lives. It was a very sweet exchange. Anyway, there is a point to this. It's a story that happened today, which I thought it allows me to humble myself and admit my fault. It also teaches you that when you wrong somebody, a lot of times you don't know it. And when somebody tells you did something wrong that really hurt me, usually they're right. You just don't remember it. Like I can remember all the times my older brother beat me up. But then my younger brother one time told me, he passed on 5 years ago. I probably didn't tell you this, but he overdosed on heroin 5 years ago and died, my little baby brother. And so Mark one time, my younger brother, told me, hey, you were kind of rough on me growing up. And I had no recollection of it. Because for me it was just another day, another day. But for him, he remembered it. So because I told my older brother, hey, you beat me up all these times, my older brother was like, I have no recollection of that. I don't remember that. Because that never happened. I could realize, if you don't remember it, it means it did happen, and you were probably on the wrong side of the equation. You were the one doing the wrong thing. You guys follow me? So he was like, am I right or am I right? He's got a really powerful personality. He's powerful. Navina Nirada is a leader. He's Swiss-German, so he's incredibly competent and intelligent and meticulous, and he's also really inspirational. But he's also a soft-hearted devotee. It was really nice for me to see. We met each other when we were kids, and, a lifetime's gone by. He's 53 now. He was probably, 25 or something like that when we met. Now his age has doubled. I was 23, now I'm 48. So, quarter century's passed. And such a soft-hearted devotee came and sat with me and said, I just don't want there to be any space between us. Life is short. I want to feel love for my friends. I want my friends to love me. And I want to take the trouble that this is the most important thing. He said, actually, I see Vaisheshika Maharaj. He's 10 minutes away from me. We live in the same neck of the woods. He said, I came down to see you. It's like, really, sweet. Brought a tear to my eye when he said that. The one of us? All right, no problem. And so, intimate friendship, love, closeness, these things are the stuff of life. They're what makes life worth living. People you play the game with are what makes the game worth playing. Maybe you can play a game by yourself, like what fun is there in that? It's the people you play with and the love that gets exchanged that makes life worth living. And so I was really impressed by what a great devotee that Navina Nirada is, what a soft heart he has, and how, beneath this really powerful personality is just a very, very soft heart. They describe Vaishnavas either like honey or they're like shellac. If they're like honey, their heart's just always soft. If they're like shellac, they might appear hard, but as soon as you apply a little bit of stimulus, their hearts immediately soften, like shellac melts when you apply heat to it. And so, anyway, his heart is like honey. It's also like shellac. I was appreciating both. But you really see the similar thing from Krishna. Krishna starts out and he says, hey, if you do this, we can be close. And certainly there has to be something from us. We have to participate in the relationship. You get an all-good, all-powerful deity. We still have to open the door. Even if it's just opening the door to grace, even if it's just receptivity. If we don't live in a monergistic world where everything is God's responsibility, then there is some synergy there, and we have to do our part. And through the Gita, you see Krishna almost like lowering the bar. He starts off with this verse, and by the time he finishes with this verse, the thrust is very much on what he'll do for us. And he's almost begging us to open the door. And so when I thought about Krishna's sweetness and how Krishna evolves his teaching and makes it really easy, and almost begging us to engage. And I thought of a nice example that I actually had like a little mini experience of that today with this wonderful devotee, and how he reached out to me and like went the extra mile. I was the one who made the offense. I did something wrong. But he went the extra mile to reach out to me to fix my offense. You follow? Like what should have happened is I should have realized. And I was busy. I must have been like doing something. I was busy and I was in my head, or I was going through a tough time or something like that. And it was the fault of negligence. And we should remember to take time for people. We should remember what the purpose of life is to love people and have sweet exchanges. And we should take the time to slow things down and connect with people. We should never be too busy to do that. We should never be too busy getting things done. He's like Mr. Get Things Done, and he was telling me today, we should never be too busy getting things done to make a connection with somebody. And it really struck me. It really affected me. I really felt humbled and edified by it. And as I'm looking at this verse today, I'm seeing a similar thing here. Krishna's slowing things down and reaching out. And in a lot of ways, all through the Gita, the highlights of every chapter are where Krishna does something like this and reaches out and opens the door and reaches out his hand and opens up to us. And we have to do our part. We have to answer that call. We have to open the door. We have to stretch out a little bit, get out of our comfort zone, give a little, open our hearts up, be a little bit vulnerable. Create an opportunity for Krishna to show us a miracle. Anyway, those are some thoughts I had about the verse. You want to move on to the next one? You want to continue? You got some more thoughts you want to share?
No, that's good.
Let's move on to the next verse. And let's just read, by the way, let's just read Prabhupada's translation like we always do in the last verse and the next one. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you'll come to me. And then this next verse, which mirrors very closely the previous verse in the 18th chapter. So these verses actually go together. They go together. We'll probably skip that, but they actually go together. Listen again, Arjuna. Because you are my dear friend, for your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving you knowledge that is better than what I've already explained. So Krishna says, Bhuya eva mahabaho, O great armed one. And the point he's making to Arjuna is, Arjuna was very, very physically fit. He was very muscular. He was like, he looked like a warrior. And so a classic term, mahabahu. Bahu means arm. Maha, great armed one. It's a term that you wouldn't glorify Brahmana with that term, or a priest, but you glorify Kshatriya with that term. O great armed one. In other words, you're so physically strong, why don't you have a strong heart and understand this? Bhuya, again, O great armed one. Shrinume, listen to me. Paramam vachaha, to my supreme instruction. It's the same words I mentioned were spoken. It's the supreme instruction. Listen to me. I'm going to say it again. Yatte ham priyamanaya, because I think so lovingly about you. Priyamanaya means you're so dear to my mind. Because I think so lovingly about you. Bhakshami hitakamya, desiring your welfare, I speak. I'm speaking, desiring your welfare, because I think of you so lovingly. Listen again as I speak further. In the last one, I'm going to say it again. In this one, the word bhuya means again. Like you might say, and again. And like it means you're going to speak more. Or you might say, I'm going to say it again. It means you spoke it before. And you're going to repeat yourself. So in this one, he's going to speak even more on this subject. And then at the end of the book, he says, I'm going to repeat what I've said previously. So it's the same word bhuya being used in two distinct ways. You guys following this? So the translation, listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna. Because you're my dear friend, for your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I've already explained.
So he's opening up in a quite dramatic way, and he's preparing Arjuna, and through Arjuna, teaching the whole world. If you want to do something of magnitude, then you have a certain thought, a certain strategy, just like a director or a conductor in an orchestra. They know how to put things in scene. So this is like the introduction to the scene. Krishna is revealing his own different potencies, his own nature that is being manifested and viewed in the world through different personalities that represent him, different aspects of him. So that's why it starts out by Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So Bhagavan Bhagavan is the possessor of all opulences. Anybody remembers what are those opulences that make Krishna so distinct from any other personality in this world? What is everyone looking for? I'll give you a hint.
Name, fame, opulences.
Okay, what are they in specific? Like, when you go out into the world of names, what are you looking for? Come on, work with me, people. Work with me, people. Okay, good. We got one. What else? Wealth.
Intelligence.
Fame. Strength. Okay. Now where does renunciation fit in all of this? Doesn't that sound like something a little negative? To renounce, to give up? Have you ever wondered about that one?
Sure.
You know, all the other fives are like, ta-da, 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 ta-da. Yeah, I want all that stuff. Do you want renunciation? You know St. Augustine, who said, oh God, please give me
Chastity.
Yeah, but not quite yet. Not quite yet. Huh? So, why is renunciation one of the opulences? Not all at once. Why is it an opulence?
Because you're also, with renunciation, you're rewarded liberation from the world.
Because the result of renunciation is liberation was the first muttered response.
Okay, so that's a good start. It's a good starting point. Starting out for nirvana, for liberation.
Because you're disattached from what your desires.
Why would you be disattached? Why would you be renounced? Can you give me some reason? What would be a plausible state of mind?
By the way, Liv,
would make you renounced?
when he says renunciation, a synonym for renunciation is detachment. So if you say, oh yeah, renunciation is good because you're detached, it's just using the same word. You follow? You get it, right? All right.
I'll give it a shot. I think it's because if you're able to renounce what you've acquired, those things no longer own you. So you are able to give up whenever
Okay.
it's time. So you're still in power.
Okay. Warmer. Are we getting warmer?
Did you hear that, Soza? Today? Okay.
A person who is so satisfied that that person doesn't need anything or anyone. They're called, in Sanskrit is either Atma Rama, which is satisfied in the self, or Santushta, which means you're content. Like if you had a good meal and somebody comes on the street and says, would you like to have this, burger or sandwich? You say, it's okay, I'm fine. You can only be renounced if you have something better. Are you with me? You can only be renounced if you have something better. Otherwise, you'll just be torturing yourself. It's like that scribe who went to one of the Christian monasteries and they asked him to copy books. And he said, well, where is the original? And they said, well, we've been copying from copies for a long time. He said, well, I want to see the original. Show me the original. So then they said, okay, they took him down into the archive. And after a while, the people upstairs heard these screaming, these shouts of joy and yelling. And he came up and he said, celebrate! It says celebrate! And they had been copying celibate, you know? Celibate. But the actual original said celebrate, you know? You should celebrate. So, a slight little, you know? So you can only truly renounce if you have something better. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable. It will not actually last. So because Krishna, he's not full of himself, but he's actually the source of everything. Everything comes from him. So he's fully complete. In the Ishopanishad, in the invocation, one of the Upanishads, it says, Om Purnam Madak Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. That from that complete one, so many complete units emanate, but the original one is still complete. Now 1 minus 1 equals 1, and 1 plus 1 equals 1. That's spiritual mathematics. Okay? And so, he's so complete that there's no lacking. Even though so many complete units, so many universes, and so many complete living entities have emanated from him, he's still complete. Yet, Krishna is hankering for something. Now, how can a person who is completely renounced hanker for something? Back to you. That's the fun, you know, when you got two. You can, you know, either set each other up like in beach volleyball, you know, or you can dog them. It depends on how you play it, you know.
I really like what Prabhuji said about renunciation. You know, you mentioned renunciation as being like you do one thing to get something else. You just swapped it out for another word. You said something like what was it? If you're not renounced, what is it?
It doesn't own you.
Yeah, it doesn't own you, but what's the problem with something owning you? That's a question. Renunciation from material things is really another way of saying that you are attached to and you possess and you have spiritual things. Atmani evatmana tushtaha. In the self, by the self, satisfied. Krishna mentioned several places in the Gita. You should be satisfied in the self, by the self. The self should be satisfied in the self, by the self. Atmarati. Enjoying within oneself. Atma santushta. Content within oneself. And so in a lot of ways you could say that when you say renunciation, what you really mean is self-satisfied and content. It's a really nice point. I feel like I learned something I'm never going to forget for the rest of my life. I really like the way you broke that down. And I didn't know that before you spoke it. And so I'm like, I'm really grateful to be in today's class and to hear you speak. And I thought, he's just riffing, having a good time. And he's, somehow he got into the Sri Bhagavan Uvacha and ran with that and made a bit to do about that. It's not so relevant to the actual verses themselves. But then he did that, like, that epic bass drop. I don't know if you guys caught it. Did you see what he did right at the end before he handed me the mic? Did you see what happened? Tadeo, did you see what he did? Tell me what he did.
After so expertly explaining that Krishna is satisfied and therefore not and therefore detached and renounced, he said that, but he's hankering for something. And what is that something?
Right?
Right.
So good, wasn't it?
Right.
It was like an alley-oop, right?
That's right.
How tall are you? How tall are you?
6'6".
He's 6'6". He's 6'7". I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. I'm feeling smaller and smaller as the class goes on.
That's the whole point.
Right? So it's like an alley-oop. And so he made such a nice point that the nature of divinity is that the one thing that Krishna hankers for, the one thing we can really give to the person that has everything, is our love. And so, we're continuing a discussion where Krishna's reaching out to us. He's trying to establish a connection. And that's natural. And we might be looking for love in all the wrong places. But the core idea that I'm looking for love, I'm looking for connection, is not wrong. And there's this really cool, it almost seems like a contradiction. It's a paradox. But we have to let go of material things that are temporary, that won't long endure, that are subject to entropy, that represent a crippling of our actual potential, because we're reposing our ability to love in the wrong place. Because the ability to love is actually part of our conscious spiritual existence. It's a facet of the soul. And we're looking in the wrong place. So we have to let go of that, and that's detachment and renunciation, which frees us up to not get rid of that core desire, but to be the most romantic, to be the most inspired, the most enthusiastic, the most loving, the most intimate, and repose that loving propensity in Krishna. And so on one hand in the Gita you get this almost Buddhistic renunciation of the world and being near dvandva and beyond duality. And at the same time it's like this love poem where Krishna's trying to establish an intimate bond with us. And it seems contradictory. But what it really is we're letting go of what's material so we can attach ourselves to who we really are, to what we're really made to do, to what our soul is truly capable of. Back to you. You want the next verse?
No, I'm good. So the chapter starts off with Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. And the title of the chapter is The Opulences of the Absolute. So opulences means Bhagavan, the possessor of all the opulences. And renunciation is the one which is the least understood, the most misunderstood, and not really clear in a lot of people's minds. So to understand that true love means that there has to be detachment based on giving the other person the freedom to love or not to love. So it's not I own you or want to exploit you, but I truly love you, and thus I accept your decision to not be loved. And Krishna has that because he's supremely renounced, he's supremely detached. And that's what makes him supremely lovable, because he actually offers us that freedom. Whereas we say in German, und willst du nicht mein Bruder sein, so schlage ich dir den Schädel ein. Which means if you don't want to be my brother, I break your head. It sounds, pretty nice when you don't understand what it means. So, but Krishna is not that kind of God. Are you with me or are you against me? Are you going to line up with me, or is it eternal damnation and perdition? No, he says, I love you unconditionally. Even you want to go on a little scenic route, you want to do the tour on the Route 1 and get all the exits and, see whatever is there to see, I'll come with you. I'll be your friend, I'll be your guide. I'll give you knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. I'll be there to guide you. But if you want to turn to me and have a personal and intimate, a loving relationship, I'm also happy to do that. But true friendship and true love means also the freedom not to love, you know. Otherwise, it's not really true love or true friendship. So when I came down here, I didn't know what I'm gonna find, you know. I saw a guy who was pumping iron out there, and I was thinking, okay, you know, Tukram's working out, he's doing his thing, getting stuff done. And that's how we rolled for a bigger part of our lives, because we're achievers, we want to get stuff done. But then we also realized that maybe it's not about just getting stuff done, but the real stuff that needs to get done is that self-reflection, that self-improvement, that going deeper into our own hearts and figuring out what are we actually here for, and what really makes life worth living, what makes it really special. And that means, as you rightly pointed out, being vulnerable, going out on a limb, and extending ourselves. And that's what Krishna does here. And he's showing himself to his dear friend, Arjuna. Because in friendship you have to have equality. One may be a tad shorter, another may be a tad stronger, another may be a tad smarter. But if you want to have friendship, you got to have equality. You got to see eye to eye. And that means that you really elevate the other person and appreciate them for what they truly are. It can only be true unity if you can appreciate the diversity. Like, we are all so different, you know? And at the same time, we're all part of the same. But if we exclude diversity from unity, you can never really have true unity. Like, you have all the different parts in your body, they all have a particular function, but you can only truly appreciate that difference, that individuality, if you see it in context of unity. So it's an intriguing verse and an intriguing chapter, and the Bhagavad Gita, you can understand it on many different levels. So you're analyzing it from a philosophical, from a theological, from a linguistic, from a psychological point of view. But ultimately, because we want to improve ourselves, so we want to really see it through the eyes of a devotee, a person who is devoted, who experiences devotion, bhakti, because that's what truly matters to the heart. So thanks for being here and being on this journey, studying the Gita, going threadbare, and applying one's intelligence to these teachings. Krishna says we should study this and apply our intelligence to these instructions. Then what happens then?
If you apply your intelligence,
yeah,
you worship him by your intelligence.
You worship him by your intelligence. Right now our intelligence is invested in so many different activities and spheres of life. Why not invest our intelligence a little bit in teachings? And in this way we can worship Krishna and get to know him, get to love him. That would be very beautiful. Take questions or reflections?
Sure. You guys want to?
Or how long you guys go normally?
We'll go as long as we want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's our thing.
It's Friday night, right?
It's Friday night.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to jump in? Does anybody have anything they want to say or they want to ask?
When you were starting class and talking about your meeting today, I was thinking that, hearing you say that that's the point of life, of building those types of relationships and really loving somebody is what gives meaning to your life. I personally struggle with knowing how to differentiate how good attachment to certain people is okay and at the same time cultivating that detachment that we need for spiritual progress, I guess. Jagan Prabhu talked about how to be able to do that if you're self-satisfied. But for somebody that hasn't reached that level, how can we actually have meaningful relationships with somebody without getting attached materially? So what's the formula to be able to navigate that?
It's your copy.
You want to say something?
No, you're on.
Okay. When you love somebody spiritually, it lasts forever. It's also independent of what they do in response. Krishna makes this point in the Bhagavatam when he's talking to the gopis, that if you're looking to get something back, you're a merchant. And that real love is just given freely. When you get two people who love like that, their love becomes miraculous. Because it's two beautiful souls writing the most beautiful poetry. But the nature of that selfless love is it's not done to get something. If you're looking to get something from the other party, your love isn't pure. So we need to focus on understanding what selfless love actually looks like. Now, if you love somebody selflessly, and you love everybody selflessly, most people aren't going to be able to reciprocate with it, and that's fine. Then your own selfless love is its own reward, and you bring the magic and the miracle to every encounter that you have in life. If the other person is of a similar ilk, caliber, then those two things come together and they like exponentially increase, and mountains are moved, and dragons are slayed, and miracles are made. For the most part, our concept of love and relationship is fundamentally flawed. We don't even have any semblance of an understanding of what real love looks like. All of our love is based on attachment, various shades of attachment. And like the small slivers of selfless love are just overwhelmed by so much materialism, so much expectation, so much necessity for someone to reciprocate in the right way and fill your cup and remove your inadequacies, and kind of like, pouring something into a black hole. So there's like a revolution of what love actually means that has to take place. Did you follow that? Does that make sense? And I guess at the beginning, we can at least orient ourselves around this idea. We can at least understand this is what the path that we're treading and what we're trying to achieve. And then go back to your materialistic relationship with your husband and your children and your friends, and try and be a little less materialistic about it. And there's a detachment, there's a sweetness in that detachment. He was talking about it. Love really is based on really letting the person be free. And it almost seems like an impossibility, because the very nature of love is you want commitment and you want to tie things down. You follow? Does that make sense? And I think when you get people who are like in a really deep place and they're not crippled, and they're not making commitments out of being crippled, but they're making commitments out of being healthy, then those commitments last forever. And they just grow over time. And the relationship between Vaishnavas defies time. Devotees are old, but their heart's younger than it ever was. Their mind is keener than it ever was. They're more filled with love the older they get, instead of becoming cantankerous curmudgeons and losing their alacrity and losing their enthusiasm, becoming beat down and hobbled over by time. Devotees just get better as time goes on. they get more brilliant, they glow brighter. Old Vaishnavas with no teeth glow like the sun. They're the most loving, open people you've ever met. And they're simultaneously totally detached. Giriraj Swami always tells me this story. There's a devotee named Mahaprabhu Das who joined right after Prabhupada left. And they were watching a movie about Prabhupada. And he was like an Indian doctor who came, he was a lawyer, who came to the temple in Juhu. He watched the movie, he said, I'm joining your mission. He became a full-time devotee, left everything, joined the temple. And his reason was that person on that movie was the most loving and detached person I've ever seen in my life. Prabhupada fully experienced love, loved his disciples, was vulnerable, all wonderful things, and at the same time was totally detached. It almost seems like an impossibility because our entire experience of love is infatuation and attachment. We use language. Asakti means attachment. We use that to describe a particular stage of love of God. And so we rag, another word for attachment. We use that to describe that. Anurag, also attachment. It's another word. Rati is used for like extreme attachment. We use that word to describe love of God as well. We use all this language. We co-opt all this language which is used to describe negative things you have to give up, and then we use the same language to describe your love for Krishna, to really point to the fact that there's this otherworldly sense in which you lose nothing by becoming a Vaishnava. You see the truth, and you love. You see the truth of the nature of this world, you become detached from this world, you can really let go of this world like you let go of stool when you go to the bathroom. You pass stool, Bhagavad uses this example, and then you get up and you walk away. You don't lament that you've lost part of yourself and spend a bunch of time trying to recover what was lost before the separation. You're able to let go. You're not attached to that. So, I think in the beginning, at your 30-something years old, about to have a family and get crazy attached, you can start off by orienting yourself around the idea of what real love looks like and what real detachment looks like, and that they're theoretically compatible. The fact that you don't experience that, okay, but then maybe once in a while in your japa, once in a while in your meditation, once in a while in front of the deities, once in a while in front of the Vaishnava, you get some kind of glimpse and you know what to look for, and you hold on to that and you start to let go of the other. And over the course of your life, you gradually orient yourself around this most elusive and most worthy of goals. Say something.
Yeah, I was just up with His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj in Carpinteria a couple of days ago, and we're just discussing this point, the story that you shared about Mahaprabhu and about the nature of true love and renunciation. And that in the conditioned state, it's really hard to be rejected. Have you ever been rejected? Or is it just me? Huh? And I'm not just talking, like somebody rejects your friend request or somebody blocks you, but I mean like rejected, And it hurts. It really does. So it seems like the two are opposites, love and detachment. But they're not. Because in spiritual life, seeming opposites can actually become reconciled in the inconceivable nature of the Supreme. That in the inconceivable nature of the Supreme, all the seeming contradictions become resolved. So he narrated this story and gave his own personal experience with Srila Prabhupada. how Srila Prabhupada was, as you were mentioning, so kind, so loving, so vulnerable. At the same time, he had disciples that rejected him, that just dropped the ball and walked away. Yet he was always favorably disposed towards them, and he was always welcoming them back, but he did not bear a grudge. He did not feel resentment towards them. How do you feel when you're rejected? You feel something coming up? You feel something, or just somebody cuts you off in traffic, and your hand starts moving and you start making sign language and all that. Have you ever caught yourself doing that? Or is it just me? Somebody pushes your buttons. So to have that grandeur, to have that magnitude of being not just, hey, I'm cool, santushta, but actually atmarama, to be fully satisfied in the self, means you're not only theoretically in the know, but you're experiencing so much bliss, so much love, so much satisfaction in your union with Krishna and with all living entities that nothing can actually faze you, so to speak. And thus, believe it or not, Krishna is the most attractive. Why do all the girls want Krishna?
Because he's the most attractive.
And because he's the most detached. Because that is attractive. That is attractive. Somebody that's just very content, yet supremely kind and loving. That's a very rare combination. Any questions or reflections?
One final thing I'll say. Indra Jumna Maharaj, such a big person in my life, in my family's life. When he talks about his guru, he sounds like somebody who's in love. He writes to Prabhupada regularly. I watch him on Instagram. He writes stuff to Prabhupada regularly, like love letters. I think about you more every day. I remember when you looked at me, when you spoke to me, like it was yesterday. You're never far from my thoughts. I can't wait to be with you again. Whatever I've done in this lifetime is just so I can be close to you again. And also when I see pictures of him with Prabhupada, you see this he's glowing, and he's everybody else is looking around, and he's just focused on Srila Prabhupada. And I've been reflecting recently, when you're pure and when you're selfless, you can really be committed to people, because you can make a commitment which isn't based on what they do for you. And so you can make a commitment for life, forever. And so this desire we have for commitment, for people to truly love us, people to be there for us. Indra Jumna Maharaj called me one time. I don't think I've ever shared this publicly before. I was just getting off the altar, and Indra Jumna Maharaj called me as I was getting off the altar. And I picked up the phone, and he said, "Hey, I was just thinking about you, and I want you to know that I would die for you." I told Radhanath Maharaj, he said this to me, and Maharaj was like, "Yeah, Indra Jumna Maharaj meant that. He would never lie to you. You were getting off the altar. He's a Vaishnava. What he spoke to you, you should because I was thinking, I don't know why he called me and said this to me, but he called and said this to me. It was out of nowhere. That was the call. The call was for him to tell me that, and then we got off the phone. I went about my day. That was it. My guru called me, tell me he'd give his life for me, and I got off the phone, and that was it. And I didn't know how to take it. So I called Radhanath Maharaj for a little bit of guidance. And he said, yeah, he's a Vaishnava. He would never lie to you. He meant that. That's how he feels about you. And from the time I was a kid, I've always wanted people who really would love me that much. I want to love people like that, and I want people to love me like that. And if you stop trying to put a square peg into a round hole and focus on fixing yourself, Krishna will put you in contact with the most beautiful souls ever, and you'll find a love for the ages. My guru just came to town, and we were talking together, and I was washing his feet like I do every time he comes to town, and we were looking at pictures. I actually posted it on Instagram. There's a picture of me at the age of 17 washing his feet. There's a picture of me at the age of 47 washing his feet. And we're in basically the same place in LA, in the same apartment, doing the same service. And but 30 years have gone by. 2/3 of my life, practically speaking, has gone by. And we were reflecting on this, my guru and myself, and he was saying, yeah, we're a match made in heaven. We just don't know what that means. We think that means like Romeo and Juliet or something like that. We don't know what could actually be. And so when we start to focus on becoming a little more selfless, it opens up the doors to a real love for the ages, a love affair with Krishna and the Vaishnavas, based on service, based on selflessness, and based on the commitment that can grow out of those things that can never come from any other kind of relationship. One time Prabhupada was talking to a professor at Boston University, and the professor was talking about translating the Gita Govinda, which is an esoteric text from our tradition. And the professor was saying to Prabhupada, how can you as a celibate sannyasi understand the Gita Govinda, which is about the romantic life of Krishna and Radharani? You follow? And Prabhupada said, only I can understand it. You're just going to relate it to your material affairs. You won't be able to understand. You'll relate it to your mundane romantic relationships. Only somebody who's celibate has a chance of understanding. We think that what we experience in this world is like close to selfless love. It's the opposite. You follow? And so you almost got to like totally do a 180. And you find yourself in the same place with a bunch of people you love and your family and this and that, but it came after a long journey of letting go and moving on. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
I'm done with my rant. Let's give Navina Nirda a round of applause. And we'll see. Thank you very much on IGTV. Thank you guys on Facebook.